Has anyone seen that eternally buzzing swarm of DeSantis sycophants? Anyone? Anyone at all? I only ask because for 11 uninterrupted months, they were on me like desperation on Madonna. Now all of a sudden they're harder to find than the plot of Death Stranding. Did perhaps something happen? Perhaps last night? Perhaps as I watched with wide-eyed, turgid glee as I attempted to French kiss my own genitals?
And Kevin, we have some big news here. Decision Desk HQ has called the Iowa caucuses for former President Donald Trump. I have the numbers right here. They're still coming in. Trump right now at 56.3%, Nikki Haley at 18.1%, Ron DeSantis at 17.5%.
I mean, you should have known something was up when Mike Cernovich filed quietly out of DeSantis influencer echo chamber land 4 months ago or so, from predicting Trump's loss before he predicted his victory to predicting a red wave before predicting the opposite. This man's family crest is a weather vane, and being biomechanically engineered for fair weather, when he finally dislodged his thumb from his dumper and deigned to criticize a collapsing campaign, it was much more noteworthy than some seemed to acknowledge at the time. None of which was predicated on principle, mind you. This man's political positions have built-in ball joints, but rather an aversion to what he recognized, as anyone with an ocular cortex already had, that DeSantis has the worst managers since the Oakland A's. But this cross-eyed neocon proved to be an outlier, with everyone from Ann Coulter to Shill Mitchell to the oracle of opposite day, Dave Rubin, doubling or even tripling down on Heavy D, serving up and snorting line after line of uncut China white cope, blaming everything from low turnout, even though Trump broke an all-time turnout record previously set by Dole in the 80s. And yes, to our old friend, the cult of personality. Yeah, well, if it takes a personality to start a cult, I guess that explains why Ron DeSantis doesn't have one. Imagine paying out $200 million increasingly devalued Biden bucks, also, you can fail with flying colors. What are you, Xbox? Put it this way. Ron DeSantis spent the entire budget of the Doctor Strange movie for the privilege of a 30-point pooper pounding. Why piss away seismic sums of money on elected office if the idea is to selflessly serve the constituents? Well, perhaps it's time for the normies to join the growing legion of idle paranoid in admitting elected office has more perks than Kurt Angle's bloodstream. I mean, how the hell else did the Clintons go from fleeing office in financial ruin to owning their very own separate mansions? Indeed, it appears the DeSantis campaign accomplished little apart from whining and dining donors who waited all of 18 seconds after the Iowa caucus to slide a great big Rambo knife between his ribs and proceed to spin it harder than Elvira's nipple tassels. Again, I dig DeSantis, such as he is. You like his record. Look, I like his record, but watching DeSantis speak is like watching DeSantis speak. Look, even putting the perpetual pair of go-go boots he's always wearing aside, this man is stiffer than Nick Fuentes at Chippendales. And closing out the Iowa campaign by trumpeting the poor judgment of Donald Trump's political cabinet appointments was merely the half-digested corn kernel atop the turd smoothie. And that's a tough road to hoe even in hooker heels, particularly when DeSantis effectively allowed himself to be flattered into hiring the worst campaign managers this side of Kanye. You don't turn a 2-point lead in a close race into a 30-point loss without a veritable dog team of flat zero encephalographs pulling the sled. And as I said in the Trump-DeSantis dichotomy rant, this is the fundamental, unassailable issue for Ron and the Ronettes. Every conceivable criticism I can and do regularly level at the Don also applies to the Ron. Cranky at T-Rump's retarded gun policy and bump stock bans? Well, red flag Ron's equally imbecilic on that issue, I assure you. Disappointed the Don didn't do enough on immigration? I heartily agree, which is why when Martha's Vineyard shipped back all those illegals DeSantis sent him, I kinda sorta expected Ron's response would amount to much more than a stern finger waggling. And don't even start up with the Trump lost to Biden BS. Yeah, and your boy just lost to him. So what does that say about you? And second, if you're wondering why Ron's "he lost to Biden" talking point has landed like a Malaysian jetliner in Iowa, CNN, of all outlets, put the question to their decidedly skewed audience and unwittingly engineered the most spleen-rupturingly hilarious moment of the entire ordeal.
Do you think Joe Biden legitimately won the 2020 election? 68%, more than 2/3 of those in these early entrance poll results showing up early to the caucus sites say no, he did not, wrongly say no, he did not win legitimately in 2020.
I'm going to come.
Look, I am further to the right than the part in Trump's hair, and thus am more than slightly resigned to the fact that our entire leadership class are a self-congratulatory coven of crayon eaters. I feel like a lesbian having a three-way with two male feminists. Any way this ends, I know I won't be satisfied. And thus, given the choice, why pull the lever for a Kroger brand Trump with half the charisma when the OG is right there on sale? Not that the entire primary process has been utterly pointless. Watching Vivek habitually curb stomp Nikki Haley in these debates has been funner to watch than Kat Dennings on a trampoline.
And Nikki Haley's campaign launch video sounded like a woke Dylan Mulvaney Bud Light ad talking about how she would kick in heels. At the first debate, she said that only a woman can get this job done. That's what she said. After the third debate, when I criticized Ronna McDaniel after 5 failed years of leadership of this party and criticized Nikki for her corrupt foreign dealings as a military contractor, she said that I have a woman problem. Nikki, I don't have a woman problem. You have a corruption problem. And I think that that's what people need to know. Nikki is corrupt. This is a woman who will send your kids to die so she can buy a bigger house.
Anyone who's read the Kama Sutra knows no one can screw an Indian woman like an Indian man. I said it at the time, but people were reading entirely too much into Trump's anti-Vivek invective. There's nothing wrong with Vivek railing against Trump, and by the same token, there's nothing at all wrong with Trump taking a Truth Social and unleashing a caps lock cannonade against same. Look, if Vivek truly wanted Trump to be the guy from the outset, why would he even bother running? Of course he'd rather be the president. You may have caught on to the fact that they were sort of kind of running against each other this entire time. Operative qualifier there being were.
And I'm also making the decision that this has to be an America First candidate in that White House. As I've said since the beginning, there are 2 America First candidates in this race. And earlier tonight I called Donald Trump to tell him that I congratulate him on his victory. And now going forward, he will have my full endorsement for the presidency. And I think we're going to do the right thing for this country.
But I'll say this, in that moment right there, Vivek Ramaswamy demonstrated infinitely more executive acumen than the entire Republican field stacked on top of each other. Because unlike Nikki, Ron DeSantis, or Chris Crisco, transparently waiting for the courts to arrest their political opponent while devoting all 8 volts of brain power to pretending not to be doing so, Vivek recognizes that the voters have chosen. The only path to Pyrrhic victory would be to remain in the race and tacitly endorse the election lawfare of the left. Or they can concede the efficacy of the words of the great John Milton, who overcomes by force overcomes but half his foe. If you compromise and cuck out to the intern, even if you ascend to the presidency, who's to say if you stray even an angstrom from the Uniparty's open border BS, they won't unleash the self-same strategies to total your administration. And so that leaves the only remaining recourse. Drop out like a Marxist from a basic economics class. That Chris Christie has for once been ahead of his own event horizon on this issue says something about how genuinely dire his private prospects actually were. A fact he inadvertently acknowledged in the most hilarious hot mic moment since John McCain called his wife a Joy Behar.
She spent $68 million so far, just on TV. Spent $68 million so far, $59 million by DeSantis, and we spent 12. I mean, who's punching above their weight and who's getting a return on their investment, you know? And she's going to get smoked. And you and I both know it. She's not up to this. I talked to DeSantis called me, petrified that I would.
He's probably getting out after Iowa.
Well, Chris Christie says he's just an average American, but in truth, he's more like American football. It's an achievement if he moves 10 yards, which is ironic given the man's approval numbers look like a hockey score. And after that Donald Duck quip in debate 1, he couldn't get arrested at Tiananmen Square.
No one up here is going to call you Donald Trump anymore. We're going to call you Donald Duck.
Christie would have dropped out sooner, but folks, we have rules about refuse disposal, which brings me to Nikki Haley, a woman with more Democratic funding than most Democrats. How much more? Put it this way. Her foremost donor is LinkedIn founder Reid Hoffman, the sentient tub of tapioca pudding who bankrolled E. Jean Carroll's comically improbable assault allegations against Donald Trump. Improbable because Trump was banging every playmate and model that wasn't already blowing Hugh Hefner, and probably a fair few who were, and comical because the woman looks like a prom queen at a leper colony. But forget the facts. Haley happily hopped into bed with Jabba the Hutt all the same. I find myself frankly dumbstruck as I've observed the Nikki campaign's every flailing, fruitless attempt to assail the Tea Meister from angles Sun Tzu hasn't dared consider, when the easiest attack vector by far is already looking her flush in her facelift, helpfully pointing out that, hey prick, weren't you the one who made the mistake of providing me with employment? And in this, I'm like the Dallas Cowboys. I have no defense. Watching that walking pantsuit stride in the UN to stump for sanctions against Candyland and Narnia was like watching Biden trying to program a VCR. Furnishing Nikki Haley with an income isn't just one of Trump's greatest mistakes. It should accord the highest possible punishment Judge Dredd could conceivably engineer. 10 years in the cubes, listening to Tim Pool's music on repeat. I'm Razor Fist. Godspeed.
One by one, soon they all will sing the song. Going down, one by one, we won't stop until we're done.
Hey, is this heaven? No. It's Iowa.